Hello, today is your daily tip from Wolfe Realty, and this video is all about unrepresented buyers coming to your listing and writing a contract to purchase. All right, let's dive right in. So first and foremost, in the contract, there is a portion there that allots for an unrepresented buyer. And your Missouri Realtor contract addressed this far better than any board contract, KCAR contract, SLAR contract, anything else that I've seen. So definitely make sure you're using your Missouri Realtor forms. But in that section there where you do your listing commission, and I'm going to use hypothetical numbers here. I'm going to use numbers that are not in line with what we're talking about. But again, you charge what you need to charge, and you just take these numbers and this situation and make it your own. Okay, so let's say I was going to charge a seller 10% to list their property. But then I'm going to share on the next page. It talks about sharing a commission. So I'm going to share 10%. So overall, my listing fee is going to be 20%. And then I'm going to share 10% with another agent. Now, if an unrepresented buyer comes through, we all know that that is more work than we would have to do if we only represented the seller. So sometimes I'll hear agents say, oh no, I want to do that for the buyer. It's, because I might see a commission instead of the, let's say 20% in that first line, sharing 10, right? I might see a commission there for 10% down below or 5% down below, right? Like a quarter or a half or something, right? I'll see these odd numbers to me that really doesn't make sense to me. And so, if we represent that unrepresented buyer, that's a lot more work. I mean, we're writing a contract, we are walking them through that process, and we should be compensated for that. So let's say I had a 20% listing commission. I was going to share 10 on page 2. But in that next section down, there's a portion there that talks about unrepresented buyer. In that portion, I may put 15%. Maybe I don't want to get my 20% because I'm not really representing this buyer, but I am doing some work. So in that next portion down, I would put a 15% commission. That way it would maybe give my seller a little bit of a break. I don't have full on liability, but I do have responsibility. It's going to count toward my E&O. It's going to count as a deal in my overall numbers and all of those things. So now let's talk about how you handle it when they come to you. So keep in mind, you are a seller's agent. You have no duties, obligations to that buyer. You give them a Missouri broker disclosure form. These are the agency capacities I work on this particular property. I'm working as a seller's agent. All right, if they don't ask for that agency representation, then you should not be offering it. You have a duty and obligation to your seller as their seller's agent to take care of their interest without necessarily diving off into being a buyer's agent. Now, once you go under contract, or even working up to the contract, maybe you're going to tell the buyer, here's a blank contract. This is a contract that I would normally have filled in as a draft. Why don't we talk about the changes or the things you want to make here so that I can make those appropriate changes, and I'll send you a new draft that complements your request and what you're looking to do. And then I'll send them that contract for their review. And if it looks good, then I'll drop it in for them to sign or sign in person, or we'll walk through it in person. So once that's done, then we actually start the process, and we will continue, like I would typically continue to transaction close that file to closing. Email it to their lender, of course. Can I make sure that the appraisal's been ordered? Of course. All of those things are my responsibility to make sure my seller is appropriately represented. Can I send inspectors to the buyer? Of course, I can send inspectors. Can I make one singular representation of, hey, this is the inspector you need to call? I cannot. I am a seller's agent. And so in that, it is important that you use the inspection authorization form to say that the buyer ordered, that the buyer set up, so-and-so inspector, and this is the inspections they're doing. So maybe you're going to have ABC inspections doing a home termite radon inspection. Maybe you're going to have Main Street Plumbing do a sewer scope. Maybe you're going to have Atkins do a, I don't know, maybe a carpenter ant inspection. Right? You should have those listed out on the inspection authorization form and selected, let the buyer set up the who, what, when, where. Because if you set that up as a seller's agent, that's giving you more liability than you probably want to have. And so one more time in closing here, let me say that you absolutely can show and write a contract for a buyer who is unrepresented, but do not sign a buyer's agency with them, because your first fiduciary and your first responsibility is your seller in whom you have a listing contract with. So if you got any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, give me a call, and I'm happy to answer those questions. Thanks so much and have a great day.